Well, welcome to Julie's Wreath Boutique. I have been wanting to do this video for a very long time because it's one of my most requested videos, because everybody gets a little mixed up when it comes to different kinds of mesh and the different kinds of deco mesh and burlap and poly burlap and faux jute mesh, and there's so many different things that I just wanted to take the time, make a short video, kind of explain it to you so that you can know what is the difference between all these different brands and meshes. Okay, so we're going to start off with our poly burlap. In the majority of my videos, I would say I use poly burlap the most. I really enjoy poly burlap, and it's going to be called poly burlap mesh on the roll. And it typically, I really think that this is the only company that makes it, so it always comes from China and generally has the same item numbers from site to site. Now here's the issue with poly burlap mesh. You will not be able to find this at Hobby Lobby, let's see, Michael's, Joann's, AC Moore, any type of local craft store, like nationwide craft store. They don't carry a poly burlap. I don't know why. I wish they did, but they don't. So how do you get your poly burlap? I'm going to list 3 places that I purchase from. I purchase from thewreathshop.com, craftoutlet.com, and trendytree.com. I will put those in the link below, but that is where you're going to find poly burlap mesh. So, can I cut poly burlap mesh with a wood burner? You all know that I use the wood burner tool quite a bit, and the answer is yes, you can cut poly burlap mesh with a wood burning tool. This is the tool that I use. I do recommend, if you can see the sharp tip, but that's the tip I use. This will put off a smell, so you really should protect yourself against that. You should have a mask on, maybe an air purifier, maybe do this with a window open, but you should take the precautions. So I'm just going to cut this at a 10-inch so that you can see what I do. I do it just very slowly. I do try to go between the lines so that when it's done, I have a nice straight edge. So that's poly burlap. Okay, so let's talk about deco mesh, because when I make a wreath with poly burlap, I do get this question a lot. Can I use deco mesh? Yes and no is my answer. Okay, and I'm going to show you why, because we're going to cut a piece of deco mesh. This is just regular deco mesh. It's called Deco Poly Mesh. This is what it's going to say, Deco Poly Mesh. Okay, and yes, you can cut this with a wood burner, but it's not the same as this poly burlap. And let's cut a piece and I'll kind of explain it here. I'm going to use the same tip. I don't change my tips, and there are other tips that you can use as well. You don't have to use this tip. And I will leave my link below for my wood burner in the description box below. Okay, so I cut that. Now, let me explain to you why it's not the same thing. Deco mesh is, this is the way I would explain it. Deco mesh has a mind of its own. Poly burlap really can mold and do what you want it to do. Now, if you look at them side by side, you can see that this is a more substantial piece. It's made out of more like plastic. That's what this is. And then this is made, let's see what this is made. It's like a poly, it doesn't say on here. Goodness. I think it's a polypropylene. I think that if I'm saying that correctly. And it's more of a see-through product. Okay, so if you use deco mesh, you will use more of this than you will of the poly burlap. Yes, the deco mesh may be $3 or $4 a roll, and this is going to be maybe $8 to $10 a roll. But it will make a difference when you're making a wreath. When you're making a wreath and need 3 rolls of this versus maybe 1 roll of this. It just depends on what you're making. So if I just make my normal petal, okay, that's what it does. Okay, it doesn't hold its shape. So when I go like this, you know, you could do my petal where I go like this and do this, but you're going to need a whole lot more of these than if you did the poly burlap and you did this. So putting them side by side, you can kind of see that the poly burlap is going to cover more, more space on your wreath frame is what I'm saying. But they're just not the same. They don't act the same. I feel like poly burlap has a little bit more give, and I feel like Deco mesh kind of limits what you can do. But let me tell you something. If you want to make a fabulous Deco mesh wreath, I'm going to leave the link to my friend Michelle Noble of A Noble Touch Crafts, and she is the one that kind of pioneered the Deco mesh flower, and she has this special fold, and it really works well for Deco mesh. It's perfect for Deco mesh, so I will link her below. So that's the difference. Deco mesh and poly burlap mesh are not the same, so you don't want to mix those up. So if you see me making a wreath with the the poly burlap mesh, you probably want to use the poly burlap mesh. You want to go ahead and order online. A lot of these places, if you order a certain amount, you can get free shipping. So that is a good deal, but you might have to save up, you know, to spend $69 at Craft Outlet to get that free shipping. Deco mesh does make beautiful wreaths. You can do like a poof method. You can do the curl method. This is what I use for my snowman wreath. There's so many wreaths that you can make with it, but it's just different. So it's hard to explain when somebody says, what's the difference between poly burlap mesh and Deco poly mesh? Well, there's a big difference. One is made of basically plastic, and one is made of the polypropylene. I believe that's right. If I'm wrong, just tell me in the comments. It's okay. So that's the difference between those two. Now there's different types of Deco mesh, so let's get into that now. So here is a Deco mesh that has, I don't know if you can see that. Can you see how it has like this sparkly like metallic in it? Now I haven't used a lot of this. My friend Michelle has, from A Noble Touch Crafts, so make sure you go and subscribe to her YouTube channel. But I don't use a lot of Deco mesh, but what I do do, that doesn't make any sense, is when I'm ordering off of these sites that I mentioned a little bit ago, I do like to order some different meshes just to see if I want to experiment, if I can make something with. Obviously, I bought this for July the 4th and didn't get around to using it. So, but let's see, and I'm not sure, this is going to be kind of a, we're just going to kind of test this. See if the wood burner will cut through those metallic strands, because we want to know. So let's try it. It's either going to work or not, and it is working. So here you go. If you buy the Deco mesh that has the metallic strands, it will cut with the wood burner. Now I have a few little straggly ends here that, you know, I don't know, but it's better than cutting it with rotary cutter or some other electric machine. There's just no difference. There's a huge difference, I should say, between cutting with a wood burner and cutting with a rotary cutter when you're making all of your wreaths. So that's why I kind of recommend the wood burner, but again, wear a mask. So that's Deco mesh, and that's all the package said. But it did have, sometimes they'll say like a metallic mesh. So it will cut through the metallic mesh. If you get a roll and it doesn't work, I'm sorry, but I'm just going to experiment with what I have at the time. So let's put this to the side. This is called burlap mesh. I have not used this yet. I have not experimented with this yet. Like I just said, I tend to buy things and I end up forgetting I have them, and then I end up using them down the road. Because this is burlap mesh and it is 50% jute. Jute burlap is a natural burlap. That's what this is here that I used in a video that I made a flower with that has become really popular. And I will try to remember to link that below. If I don't, just remind me and I'll send you the link. And like this kind of mesh that I use for my pumpkins. And again, that's another video that I have. That is jute burlap. Jute is a natural material. Your wood burner is not going to cut through that. So because this is 57% jute and 43% polypropylene, which is what's in Deco mesh, I believe, I'm not going to even try it with my wood burner because I know that the wood burner is not going to cut through those natural fibers of jute. So I don't know if I can open this up a little bit more. So if I go to make a wreath using this, I am going to need to use, this is my new favorite rotary cutter, and I'll leave the link to this below. But this cuts very nicely. But you're going to need to use a rotary cutter. You don't want to be using scissors to cut this stuff. It really becomes a hassle. I mean, if that's all you have, it's just going to take you a long time. But if you can see, I don't know how well you can see, that is the natural jute. A wood burner is not going to cut through that. And sometimes in fabric mesh that we're going to talk about here in a few minutes, they will have it and it won't cut that either. So that is burlap mesh. Okay, so you know that if you order burlap mesh, you're not going to be able to cut through with a wood burner. But let's go ahead and cut it. And I think this is going to act more like a Deco mesh. I'm going to cut off the side here. I don't know if you can see me. Move my glass table here. I think that this is going to be more, it's going to act more like a Deco mesh. So when you want to work with it, you're going to think of it as more of a Deco mesh. And so if I make a petal, that's what it's going to look like. You know, you're still going to need a whole lot more to make a wreath, a full wreath. So just know that if you order one roll thinking, well, Julie only used one roll of the Poly Burlap, it's not going to be enough. Just so order extra. So that is burlap mesh. Okay, let's move on. There's another product out there, and I don't have a brand new one of these, but I did make some snowmen with this, and they were super cute. And this, I believe, is either and help me in the comments below, it's either a Snowdrift or a Snowball Deco mesh. And I don't think that my wood burner is going to cut this, but we're just going to test it out and see. I don't know. Well, nope, it's cutting through it, even though it's got that like snowball cotton stuff in it, it's still cut through it. So if you want to try this kind of Snowdrift, I forget exactly what it's called, it's a Deco mesh, and you want to make a beautiful wreath out of it, you can cut that with your wood burner. So let's go to the next one. All right, so I get questions on this, and I just talked about the two videos that I will link below. One is for a pumpkin, one is for a flower wreath. You cannot cut these with a wood burner. This is a natural jute burlap. It doesn't say it on the tag, but I can just tell you right now, it's the burlap that has a lot of fibers to it, so when you cut it and play with it, you kind of get it all over your clothes. Again, you might want to wear a mask when you deal with this, but it just depends on, you. So don't use a wood burner on anything that comes in a roll like this that is that natural fabric feeling, rough fabric burlap. So don't use a wood burner. Okay. Well, fabric mesh. Now, I get questions about, can you use fabric mesh? Can I cut my fabric mesh with a wood burner? Yes and no. This brand right here is from Joann's, and I can tell you right now that I cannot cut this with a wood burner because it has some natural jute lines through it. If it has any jute, if it says jute fabric mesh, you're not going to be able to cut it. If it says just fabric mesh, you might. So like this one I can cut, and this one I can't. So it just kind of depends on this one comes from Joann's, this one comes from like Craft Outlet, the Wreath Shop, Trendy Tree, and all of them sell this. It depends on who makes it. It really does. It's kind of one of those things where you're going to have to unroll it out, cut it, and see what happens. Okay, so that I can tell you, fabric meshes, sometimes you can and sometimes you can't. Like with this one, I believe I can cut this one. This is fabric mesh, and I do like fabric mesh better than Deco mesh if I had my choice. Now again, I'm going to cut in between the squares here. If I had my choice to work with one product versus the other, for me, just only on a preference, a personal preference, I would use fabric mesh. I do have several videos using only fabric mesh on my YouTube channel, so just go through the videos and you can find it. Maybe I need to make a playlist and have like fabric mesh reads and you know, Deco poly wreaths, and you know it. You get my drift. So I just kind of like, I just like the feel of it. I feel like fabric mesh acts more like a fabric. It has more a better shape. Can you see how that has a better shape than the Deco? Let me grab the Deco here. Okay, so we can kind of compare the two. And that's kind of the look. I don't know if it probably shows up more in person, like when I manipulate it. This is just a softer feel. So I just really like fabric mesh. It's kind of probably my 2019 new favorite thing to work with is fabric mesh. And a lot of times I really do like to combine what I'll do in some of my videos, especially if the mesh, I know this doesn't go together, but especially if the mesh has like a pattern on it and I really want that pattern to like pop out, I will take it and line it, and so that way you can kind of see the pattern. That poly burlap will make it pop out more. So I don't know, that is kind of pretty, those colors. Maybe I'll have to make a wreath with that, but I really like fabric mesh. It's kind of my new fave. All right, so what's another style of mesh? This is something new, and I have been doing some wreaths with it. It is a cotton faux jute. So it's basically a cotton fake burlap check mesh. So I don't believe there's any burlap, but it's made from cotton. Or maybe it's fake cotton and fake jute. It has 10% fake jute and it's 22% cotton. So yeah, so it's fake burlap, whatever that means, and 68% polypropylene, which is the Deco mesh. So it's kind of got a little bit of everything. It does not have poly burlap in it. But actually this does feel a little bit, this one black strand feels a little bit like poly burlap. Here's the thing, you cannot cut this with a wood burner because of that jute. If this didn't have the jute in it, you could cut it. But because of that jute, I can't cut it. But when I do cut this, and again, I cut it very, very slowly. I'm gonna cut, let's just cut another one here. It does pretty good. It doesn't unravel too much. I believe I got this from, you know, that's me cutting it without it, and even I gotta pull pretty hard to get something out. So I really do like this. I have several tutorials using this, and I will be making more. So that is cotton faux jute check mesh. So I think the last thing, I'm looking through everything. I think I've pretty much gone through it. They do have like Craft Outlet and Trendy Tree. What I have noticed, every spring and every fall, different meshes will come out, and these companies will have them, and depending on how well these sell will be kind of probably a determination if they offer them again. This is a poly burlap check mesh, and it is only called a check mesh because it's kind of like a check. It's all poly burlap. I have a video on this using the same mesh, and you can cut right down it as well with a wood burner. Okay, so take advantage, take the time to look at these sites. Remember, you're not going to find this at Michael's or this at Michael's. You may find this at Hobby Lobby and this at Joann's. Okay, it's kind of a seasonal thing for them. I wish they would start carrying more of it throughout the year. You can find Deco mesh. I will be honest, Hobby Lobby's Deco mesh is not that great. If you use it, you can use it, but I think you're going to be frustrated with it. I'm not real familiar with the Michael brand. Joann's, I haven't used their Deco mesh either. So if you've used a national chain Deco mesh, if that sounded right, leave me a comment below and tell me which brand you like and why you like it, so that my other subscribers can look and see and get some knowledge, and we can all help each other out. I hope this has been a helpful video. I hope that I've explained it clearly enough so that you'll understand why it is when I'm using the poly burlap, maybe why the Deco mesh now is just not quite the same product. So Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope I haven't bored you. I hope you've learned something today. And please make sure to subscribe, share, and like, and let me know how much you liked if this was informational for you. So, have a wonderful day, and we'll see you next time at Julie's Wreath Boutique.